Hey, Katie here, and we are having our Saturday morning esoteric word. So, Peter will be joining us momentarily, and today we will be talking about John 14:6. And the verse goes I am the way, and the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And so, Peter's been studying the Bible for several years now. He grew up Christian. I grew up in Utah, not studying the Bible, but I started to study a few years ago and knew that there was deeper meanings to it than we were being taught. So Peter and I started collaborating a couple of months ago, and we are just excited to be bringing different truths to you, whether you believe it or not, just expanding our minds to feel the truth, which is something we'll be talking about today. So welcome, Peter, and thank you so much for your time.
Sure. Thank you for having me today.
So I already did read the verse, so I just wanted to go ahead and get right in. So with the way, what does the way mean?
Yeah, that's a good place to start. I am the way. Um, when we think deeply about what it is to be the way, when Christ says, I am the way, he's essentially referring to the fact that there is a path for each one of us. And that path or way is within all of us. There is no way external to us. The way is within us to find who we truly are, to remember who we truly are. It's within. So when he's saying, I am the way, we all can say, yes, we are the way because there is no path, there is nothing external to us. The external world is only a picture of the internal. So within us is the way to liberate ourselves, to remember who we are.
That's beautiful. And I know we didn't talk about this earlier, but it makes me think of watching Pinocchio as a team with our archetypal awakening and seeing like those impulses. And so when I think about finding the way and going within, it's about truly understanding like our impulses. So for instance, I did a fast during a time where I was waitressing and having a potluck. And I realized that I chose to take candy because not because I liked it, but because I had a scarcity mentality. And so I think that as we start to go inward, we start to discover our impulses and why we make the decisions that we make. Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you'll call it fate. So, like in that instance, if I keep taking free stuff, then I'm going to show the universe that I want lack, that I have lack, and I'll continue to get that. Instead of being able to focus on my innards, I'll be focusing on how do I take care of my mortgage and my kids and blah, 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 instead of being able to bring my consciousness together to focus on the way within to find true enlightenment, right?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's to your point, when a person begins to live inside out, then we recognize that the outside is just the outpicturing of the nature of consciousness. And so that's the, putting the feet on the step, on the path, meaning that the person has recognized that, oh, wow, it's actually happening because of me. It's not really happening to. It's happening because my vibration is happening because my energy. When I raise my vibration, raise my energy, then I begin to attract the right lifestyle, the right things come show up.
Perfect. And that does lead us into the next spot because when you say the right lifestyle, I found that if I'm like muddied with not good thoughts, like maybe drama with a friend or a partner and eating unhealthy and drinking too much alcohol, then I actually can't see the truth and I can't hear the truth. So as we start to like uncover the way, and in the next part, I'm just going to read it again. I am the way and the truth and the life. So we've talked about the way. Is there anything more you want to say about the way before we move into truth, Peter?
I think we can, yeah, move on
Okay,
to.
cool. So yeah, what would you like to say about what is the truth?
It's a good one as well. What comes to mind also is when Jesus was about to be crucified and Pilate asked him, what is truth? Right? This concept of truth, it could be, misunderstood, most especially from a three-dimensional perspective. We always ask, what is the truth? But in reality, what truth is just the nature of existence. Truth is like everything is God, whether it's a bird, it's a the sun, or it's an animal, or it's a rock, or it's a tree. Whatever it is, all things are the source taking multiple forms. The way said in esotericism is, I spread myself, yet I exist. So Source is saying that I made everything appear, but it doesn't mean I don't exist. I still exist even though I'm making everything show up. So truth essentially meaning the ultimate principle or the universal principle of existence that guides a person's decision making. It's like the moral compass that says, does this actually resonate with my highest self or my highest being? Does this actually resonate with my God self, so to speak?
I really like that, the resonance factor, thinking about like everything is sound and light vibrations, right? Everything we see is a light vibration, everything we hear is a sound vibration. And so thinking about tuning into the truth and raising our vibration on that vibrational chart that we've talked about, it's kind of like walkie-talkies, right? So if you and I had walkie-talkies right now, or we ended up on the same Facebook Live, right? Then we've turned into the same tune and the same vibration, and so we can actually hear that truth or that wave. So that's beautiful. So I think that's all I have to say about truth. I think that really doing the work is how we can get to the truth, because I know in the past, seeing my path, it's been very funny. So the next part of it, Peter, is going to be, again, I'm going to read it fully out. I am the way and the truth and the life. So what does it mean to be I am the life?
Good question. Again, just the very fact that we can breathe, we can move, we are animated, it means that there's life flowing through us. The very fact that we can see, we can think, we can act, it means that there is life flowing through us. So what he's doing there in that mantra, in that sentence or in that statement, is he's identifying himself with the ultimate source. It's just like, you plug in your phone to the charger, for example, and the phone says, oh wow, there's life flowing through me, so I'm alive, right? So he's recognizing the fact that there's ultimate source of life that's animating his very being, his very existence, and he is that life, and we are all that life. So that's what it means to say and to claim that I am the life, meaning ultimately that one is connected to the universal source of all life. Each one of us, every bird, every animal, every tree, every rock, everything is connected to the ultimate source of life.
That's beautiful. One thing it makes me think of is that you said something about, when we realize this, then it's our job to take care of life, right? And we were in Renee Beth's Soul of Technology course with Living the Potential. And what they said is that, nature doesn't dirty itself. It is self-cleaning and self-organizing. And so we can learn a lot from nature. So I really like that, just thinking about that connection. Also, you said something about mantras, right? And just realizing, like, if my goal is to be more enlightened or have more of a Christ consciousness, be more like Buddha, Jesus, any of the great teachers that you believe in, that you like their principles. So this is going to be my goal. So then I see how they act and how they would be like, there's the bracelets, what would Jesus do, right? So then in my now, if I'm like, this is how I want to be, then I'm activating my reticular activating system. So then in my 3D reality, I'm going to get opportunities to see how I can be more like Christ, right? And I'll actually see it. Whereas if I didn't tell myself that this is who I wanted to become or how I wanted to be in my days of living, then I might not know how to get there, and the doors won't open. They say that we see like less than 1% of what's in front of us. So if you're not looking for it, you might not see it, right? If I buy a new car, all of a sudden they're everywhere because now it's in my reticular activating system. Whereas before I bought that car, I never saw it. So I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to set these mantras. And what do you see the value of mantras being for you, Peter?
Yeah, that's what I think about when I think about mantras, and I think generally about we as humans and people and persons, is that we operate based on a default set of operating programs. And those programs are given to us by the collective unconscious, parents, societal influences, what have you. And those programs reside within our lower unconscious, right? And when we think of what we call subsystems within the body, subconscious levels of our being. So when we think about mantras, we think about them as like an antivirus that we implant into our lower unconscious to begin to restructure the narrative within our subsystem. So a mantra constantly begins to switch or alchemize or transmute some of the belief systems that reside in our lower levels and aligns them with the truth of our being, so that all of ourselves, personality speaking, or from a sub-personality, we teach archetypal psychology. So from a sub-personality perspective, it's aligned. From the personality perspective, it's aligned as well. From the soul perspective, it's aligned, and everything is aligned to source, to the what we call the monad or the I am. It's all aligned to the I am, because one singular belief system has been programmed or has been induced into our total system.
That's beautiful. And thinking about it, as a person that has created some not so healthy habits, right? Like, overeating or eating too much sugar, drinking too much coffee, all the little things that we could do. What I hear you say is that as we set these mantras in place, it helps us to be more honest with ourselves in what we think, what we say, and what we do. And that's where true change happens, because it is perceived to be scary to change. And it's because we forget what the other side looks like, or we may not have experienced the other side, right? So it's beautiful to be doing this work together, and with the beautiful community that we're working with. I'm really grateful for you and for all of our community. So moving into the next part of it, no one comes to the Father except through me. And I really like this. I was raised in Utah, not Mormon, and I had a lot of religious adversity. And I know a lot of people that feel the same. And so sometimes when we hear this, it might feel a little like restricting. So what does this mean for you, Peter, when you read this?
Yes, so when Christ says, "No one comes to the Father except through me," two things there. One, he has identified himself previously, because a mantra, when you think about it, is a complete statement that has been made. So in the previous statement, he has identified himself as the ultimate source, as life itself. Now he's saying that nobody comes to the Father, the creator of life, except going through a particular principle. And that principle is what we call Christ consciousness. So the example that we talk about is like, if a person says, "I am Donald Trump," for example, or maybe that's not a, in the times where maybe that's not a very good thing a person might say. But let's say a person says, "I am," let's think of someone who is positive, a good actor, whoever it is. I'm Mark Jackson, or whoever it is. I am Obama, whatever it
Yeah,
is.
any person that you like and aspire to be. It could be
Yes.
even like Joe Dispenza. A lot of us
Yeah.
study him. Anything,
Okay,
any
exactly.
person.
So that's a good example. Let's say a person says, I'm actually looking for like an authority figure, right? Someone who has like authority over lots of things. So let's just use, for the sake of, example, I am the president of America. No one can make a decree except through me, right? No one can make a law, a policy, except they ask me first. No one can change anything except they ask me, they go through me. So playing the role of, identifying oneself as that principle, that authority of life. I am this thing that creates all of life. Therefore, no one can X, Y, Z except they come through me. That's what he's saying essentially. So he might have said it differently, as opposed to saying no one can go to the Father. He can say no one can manifest except through me. No one can have a peaceful life except through me. No one can exist except through me. Like saying, "Oh, I am the source of everything." No one can exist through me. Nothing can manifest through me. And so the main idea in his statement is that when a person has identified themselves as the all, then they're adding something else to it. Because I am the all, therefore nothing can happen except it goes through the all, through me, right? And it's a very powerful way of seeing oneself, because he was fully, God realized, and he's giving that invitation to us as well.
What just came through as you were saying that is just thinking, if all of our thoughts went through. So when the Tao, Embrace Tao ceremony last year, that's coming up in a week, they talked about how the third eye, right? And you have the three eyes. So you're feminine, you're masculine, and then you're over self. And so being able to see through all of those space, like say that I have a thought, I take it through all of that third eye, right? And I'm like, okay, is this a true thoughts, right? So it's interesting to think of taking everything through me, because that would, yeah, that's an interesting thought. Thank you, Peter. I didn't expect to say that.
Yeah.
So, um, and also, if anybody does have any questions or comments, please do comment below. So then, Peter, the next part of what we talked about is the Father. What does the Father represent?
Yes. Typically, when I, hear the word the Father, which we know that God is both masculine and feminine. However, the Father is sort of the first idea, and the Mother is sort of the not the second, but I'll say the implementer, the actor that brings the idea to life. So the Father thinks something, and the Mother initiates it. And it's almost similar to when we look at ourselves, our bodies, right? That we have masculine and feminine principle. It's because we are a fractal of the whole universe, we're a picture of how God creates, and we create the way God creates. So when we think something, we electrify it, and then when we feel, we magnetize it to attract it into our reality. And it's the same thing. The Father is the first principle that thinks, and the Mother then is the one that magnetizes or makes it manifest. And so when he's identifying as the Father, he's identifying as that principle, that idea that makes everything manifest, that ultimate source, and in many teachings, there's many names given to this one principle source of all of the ideas, everything that manifests in creation. And, it might be called the monad, the I am, the Christ, the Buddha, the Melchizedek. This, the same one principle has many names in many cultures, but most cultures and most, esoteric teachings recognize that there is one initial first principle that then has the thought or the idea that is then manifest through the mother principle, the feminine principle.
Beautiful. Very good. So then when it goes, we kind of already talked about the through me part. Is there anything more that you wanted to elaborate on about through me?
I think we delved into it.
So then Christ is a universal principle, and then thinking about um, like we kind of talked about it a little bit, but like Christ consciousness, is it only Jesus? Or are there other spiritual people that carry the same type of consciousness?
Yes, great question. So the best way to describe Christ consciousness is, I think, starting, when we teach ground up, bottom up, and top down. And sometimes it might be slightly not easy to see from top up, top down. So maybe explaining the bottom up is much makes it easier for a person to visually see it, to give a visual representation. That each one of us are like a batteries, for example, and we have levels of consciousness, right? So we can have a survival level of consciousness where we think that we are just the body, and then we have to survive, we have to take care of the body, otherwise something will happen to the physical body. We could have an emotional level of consciousness where we feel that we are the feeling, we are the feeling body, or why is this, this sadness or this specific emotion. A person could attribute their consciousness to the feeling body, or a person could attribute their consciousness to the mental body, and they think that, oh, we are the thought that we are thinking. Or a person could attribute their level of consciousness to the soul level as well. When an individual transcends the body, the emotions, the mind, they then identify themselves. The next thing is the soul. However, that's not the end of it. The next is then to identify oneself as the source, in this journey of realization. So the Christ consciousness is actually not identifying, first of all, I'm going bottom up, not top down. So not identifying ourselves with lower levels of consciousness, 3D consciousness, not identifying ourselves even with the soul level of consciousness. Christ consciousness is identifying ourselves at the level of source consciousness, universal intelligence, cosmic intelligence, the Buddhic mind, different names given to that state of being. And again, consciousness is a state of being, a state of awareness of who one is, right? A state of self-realization or a state of enlightenment. So Christ consciousness is that one singular mind or state that has emanated out of the source. It's the first, again, the first principle, the first mind of undifferentiated consciousness from the source.
That's beautiful. So, and that does tie in the emphasis on the inner journey, right? So we talk a lot about how, again, and I'm going to reiterate this because sometimes we have to hear it a couple times, and myself included. And so we become fractured in our thinking and in our feeling. And so we like, again, we're like, oh, my partner, my child, my business, my work, whatever it is that we're doing. And then we actually don't have that time to do that inner journey because we're so focused everywhere, right? So I like to think about, like, I feel right now we're truly all being called, anybody watching this is being called to step into their next state of consciousness, right? And even sometimes, Peter, thinking about hitting Buddha consciousness, I'm like, I don't know if I could attain that in this lifetime. It feels so big. So even sometimes giving ourselves that space to do smaller steps, right? Like we don't have to eat the whole buffet right now. Also with thinking about fractured consciousness and giving our energy away, like you talked about, we're a battery and we only have so much energy. And like I asked you, because I do consist of a lot of energy, and you said it's because when we're giving of ourselves, then it actually fills us up, right? And if we think about, if you're in a depressed state and you go out and help like a homeless person or a child that's hurting in some way, you're going to feel so much better, right? So that giving fills up our battery, but also not from a space of not having enough. But then when we go into thinking about, if somebody were to ask you for $3,000, you would say, well, what are you going to use it for? Are you going to pay me back? What's my investment in this going to be? And what's your investment going to be? But with our time, we don't ask that. We often freely give it away, not realizing what we're truly here for, and that is that inner journey. We've been taught that it's to pay our bills and to work for 40 years and retire and sit at the restaurant. But I believe there's a little bit more to life than that. And so I'm grateful to be growing with you and to be taking this time to create space for introspection and retrospection and seeing how am I showing up and is it in alignment with my desired outcome, whatever that may be. So what would you like to say on emphasis of, and welcome Shannon, emphasis on the inner journey and the importance of it?
I think, that each one of us, we are all souls. We know that it's no secret that we're all souls. And when an individual begins to identify themselves not as the personality, not as the character in the matrix, but as the soul, then there are many questions that begin to arise in a person's mind, because the person has transcended what it means to live in the physical world. It's no longer just about the physical world. It's now, the mind has expanded beyond physicality. It's now, if I'm a soul and having a physical experience, what does it mean to be a soul? And then the question then, the answer to that question, what it means to be a soul, is that the soul is on the journey to identify itself as source. Each one of us are on the journey to identify ourselves as source. And so people who are really taking the path seriously, or seekers, souls who are mature and are taking the seeking seriously, taking their assignment or their emanation, because all of us came out from the source. We emanated out of the source as individual souls. And when the soul gets to a level of maturity to recognize itself that, wow, I'm actually a soul, not the personality, the answer to the question is, why am I here? What am I supposed to do? And that's sorry, not the answer to the question. The question is, why am I here and what am I supposed to do? And the answer then that comes to the soul is, I'm supposed to mature and grow up to become the source, to become equivalent to the source, to become the creator, just like a child grows to become an adult. The soul then recognizes that, oh, I'm a soul, I'm a child, so to speak, a piece of my Father, God, source. I'm supposed to grow up into my Father, into my source, into my parent. And that becomes the ultimate purpose of that soul's existence. Beyond, the superficial, the soul then recognizes that the ultimate goal of my existence is to learn, to mature, to grow up and become equal to where I came from. And that drives the soul's journey. The soul, then everything aligns, everything they do, they say, they act aligns with that one singular idea, one singular mission, to mature into the fullness of source of what we call godhood. Like we have adulthood, if a person becomes an adult, enters into adulthood, the soul grows up to enter into sourcehood or godhood. And a soul can then say, I have become the I am, I have gained Christ consciousness, I am one with the Father, I am God realized, I'm fully enlightened, and so to speak. So to answer your question, what it means for an individual to go beyond personalities to gain what we call monad or source personality integration. Now the personality on earth has been integrated with the source, with where they came from, and they become the outpicturing, the ambassador, the representation of source within the material dimension. So the material has become spiritualized. We bring light into the material dimension.
Yeah, I love that. And also thinking, like, about society's conditioning and what we've been raised through. And so when we start this path, sometimes it may feel a little scary or a little overwhelming. However, it is worth it. I do tell a lot of my clients that you have to break down to break through. And so sometimes we have to break down our old beliefs to be able to bring new ones in. And sometimes it does take a little bit of time. And I like what you said, well, really quick, because you said if people are taking this path seriously and maturing spiritually, right? And so it's like just again being compassionate with yourselves, because it is a lot to go from living in the 3D to living in the 5D. And so welcome, Brandon. And then also looking at role models teaching us these different ways of being. There are not a whole lot of role models teaching us to go in. Society's taught us to go out. Don't trust yourself for answers. God's outside of you. You need to trust the government to take care of you. Like all of these things that have been outwardly, right? When you need to go to the bathroom, you raise your hand for permission. In school, when you want to talk, you raise your hand for permission. So we're not taught to give ourselves permission and to be leaders of our own lives. And so I'm grateful to be on this journey with you, Peter, to help people to become the sovereign leaders of their own lives, right? And then going to the growth and maturity. I did a energy work session with a gal the other day, and we went into the womb space, right? And just feeling her be held in the womb space and feeling secure and just growing in that space, like that whole 9 months, right? Well, it wasn't the whole 9 months, right? But that space, and when she came out of it, she said, Katie, while I was in that space in my mom's womb, I realized that literally my only job in this lifetime is to grow. And so it's beautiful when we can take time to go within, and sometimes we do need outwardly support to get there. And not always do, because if we just go into silence and stillness and listen to that for that white noise, oftentimes the answers will come, not if not in that moment, within the next couple of days. So I do invite you all to connect with yourselves more often. And Peter, you said something about maybe people creating their own mantras.
Absolutely. To exemplify, the life of Jesus, the Christ, is to recognize the powerful statements that he made, the powerful declarations that he made. And in order for us to, he says that he would do the works that I do and greater, we have to follow after his footsteps. And, we see that he uses a lot of the I am the Father are one, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life, I am that I am. And those are mantras, those are sentences and statements that he's making that enables him to overcome the illusion of the material dimension. So, the more as we understand this teaching, this principle, it's also helping us to recognize how we can create our own mantras. If a person says, okay, beyond this material dimension, beyond your name and your personality, who are you? And we can then use our mantra, whatever the case may be. A person can say, I am the power, I am the wisdom, I am the loving intelligence, I am the will, I am the consciousness of the divine, I am divine love in existence, I am the truth. We can then create what resonates with our higher self and use that as an antiviral, so to speak, to recondition the narrative that exists within our lower unconscious, the meta programs that exist within our lower unconscious. We can insert those antiviruses, those mantras, and then the way they work, the way our subconscious works is that it automatically begins to function. So it automatically begins to error correct the wrong statements that in the past have been, through the collective unconscious, have been introduced or induced within a person. So we're using Jesus Christ's mantra today in this teaching as an example for each one of us to create our own mantra. In some other places, Christ says, I am the ascension and the life. You find that he was always making these bold declarations and these statements because he said, I'm the resurrection and the life, actually, because he understood that he was going to resurrect and have life, right? So a person that really gets this will create their most powerful mantra. Who are you? I am the source of all things. I'm the manifestation of life itself. I'm the unmanifested manifestation, whatever it is. But the greatest and the highest level of thinking about who we are ultimately at the grassroots of our being is what we want to identify ourselves in order to transcend duality, the three-dimensional matrix.
Perfect. Oh, I accidentally deleted my message that I just typed. That's okay though. Cool. So, beautiful. So, thank you for sharing that part. And we are out of time, but I'm going to take another minute. So, realize what we talked about in conclusion is self-realization, and maybe next week we can go a little bit more into this. Second is soul personality integration, and then the third is source personality integration, and just remembering that the way to the truth is within. And then today we do have a class, from a Zoom workshop that's free from 10 to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And we'll be talking about basically the hero's journey in the last stages of it. So the last 4 archetypes. So that leader of your life, the fool, that light-hearted free spirit, the intellect, and the alchemist. And so just learning how we can see the different roles that we're playing in life, and then we can start to play life instead of having life play us. So if you have any questions, please just reach out to me and I can get you that link. And thank you again, Peter. Definitely go follow Peter, Peter Luxrell on Facebook and Instagram. And we look forward to continuing to grow together. Much love.